Okay, so it's 1 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, How to Build a Case for Your Nonprofit to Invest in Technology. My name is Kavita. I'm the Communications and Development Manager here at ONN. If you're new to ONN, welcome. We're the provincial network for Ontario's 58,000 nonprofits and charities focused on policy, advocacy, and services to strengthen Ontario's nonprofit sector as a key pillar of our society and economy. If you're already a member of ONN, welcome back and thank you for your support. Our public policy research and advocacy work would not be possible without you. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can type the issue into the chat box and our team will respond as soon as possible. We do encourage you to ask questions through the Q&A box. Our team is monitoring that, and you're also welcome to share comments and learnings on social media. To answer our most common question, you will receive an email with the recording and resources within a week of this webinar. So to ground our webinar today, I want to begin with acknowledging that we're meeting on unceded and unsurrendered land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from time immemorial. The ONN office is located on the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. At ONN, we believe that as nonprofits, we must take seriously our role in responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. As a treaty person, I recognize that our sector is built on and benefits from colonialism and white supremacy. For me personally, I'm committed to learning the different ways in which I can support and amplify the calls for land back, reparations, and justice. It is Indigenous History Month, and I've been thinking about the ways in which we often focus on the trauma of Indigenous peoples, especially residential schools, as the only history associated with them. This month and beyond, I want to try to learn more and amplify the work of Indigenous artists, writers, scholars, musicians, and activists who have contributed in positive and beautiful ways to our world. I invite you to do the same. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Kevin Christopher George. He's an independent technology advisor with Green Merits Consulting in Toronto. With more than 20 years of a career spanning various areas of the tech sector and seeing firsthand both the good and bad sides of technology adoption, Kevin has made a conscious shift in focus to share his background and experiences with nonprofits with the goal of helping increase their positive impact. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, Kavita. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see things pop up. Let me know if you can see everything. We good?
We're good.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again for having me on this call, which I think it's important and I think it's timely for this type of discussion as we see more and more organizations of all different shapes and sizes, especially in the nonprofit sector, gravitate more and more towards having to adopt technology solutions, especially when you think of like cloud or software as a service, kind of internet-based technologies. And my hope here is to impart some best practices or things to watch out for and things to include when you're starting to have discussions about how to secure budget and actually to secure dollars for technology that you want to invest in. So that's going to be the focus today. I think we're gonna press through, and then I think we can open things up for any questions at the tail end. So my name is Kevin Christopher George. Excuse me. Yeah, I've got for-profit experience managing and educating about and selling and renewing technology. So my career experience has kind of spanned the whole gamut. From being the guy in the server room and fixing computers and managing projects to training people on how to use technology and both in the cloud and hardware. And then working on the technology side to help customers use the platforms that they invested in and also renew their contracts, right? So it was a person that was coming to knock after 1, 3, or 5 years, asking you to sign a renewal contract. Um, and what's interesting, and I kind of alluded to this right at the get-go, is that um, companies running purely on software as a service, and this is just one example, but running on software as a service or cloud technologies. Think of your big players like the DocuSigns and Salesforces and Mailchimps, those kinds of groups. That number has grown and continues to grow year over year. This is a study that was done by B2B Tech Reviews that shows that the projected number of companies running purely on software as a service or cloud technologies is going to hit 86% by 2023. So this probably tells you that this is a trend that's not going anywhere. It's not going the wrong direction. We're just going to continue to see more and more of a move or a shift towards purchasing these technology solutions that are housed in the cloud or elsewhere, but still a significant investment in technology. And so what this trend really tells us, and I would imagine that it's probably the reason many of you are on the call today, is that you already know you need something. And I think for the most part, most organizations kind of know. They see their peers doing things a bit differently. They hear about software solutions, they attend conferences, and they learn about different solutions out there. So you might know that you need something. Today is about getting others to buy in, okay? Because you can go and say, we should really buy this cool, flashy new software solution, but if the people that hold the purse strings, that hold the budget or oversee the budget, don't agree with you, it's going to be a lot harder to try and get that solution in place. Okay, so we really want to focus on how do you get others to really buy in and agree with you that something needs to be done. And so what we're going to focus on today is kind of 5 key points. And this isn't the end all be all, but this should give you some good building blocks to create like a compelling presentation to your board or any key decision makers. Again, those people that kind of own the budget for these investments in technology. And those 5 key things are how to identify and quantify the need for technology, how to present your options, closely tied to number 2, the cost factors to consider and include. Number 4 is how will you measure your return on investment or your ROI? And then the 5th and final piece, how do you motivate action by creating a sense of urgency, right? It's one thing to go through the first 4 points, but there's always that question about, okay, what do we do now, right? Who's going to take the next step? And so that's why I want to make sure we focused on things to include in this business case presentation materials that you're going to put together that covers everything, including how to create a sense of urgency. All right, so kicking things off. It really is. It's one thing to identify a problem. It's another thing to quantify how much it hurts. And as I kind of mentioned, you can talk about the problems that are taking place within your organization, but you really won't be able to do a good job of rallying folks around the need to resolve that problem, unless you can provide them with numbers that speak to how much of a pain it actually is presenting. Okay, and so what we want to do is initially we want to focus on identifying the challenges, right? Like those high level things, those high level pain points that are proving to be problematic for you. And this could be things like website complaints, poorly organized events, reductions in budget, high staff turnover within your nonprofit, over reliance on third parties, poor collaboration internally or with external stakeholders, lapses in terms of governance, risk, and compliance, unable to try new ideas. This is just a subset of a whole host of issues that you can run into your nonprofit where that there's a problem, you can feel it, you can sense it, and you want to do something about it. Now, where this takes us to next is knowing the high level items, the high level pain points that you've identified. What you want to start doing is reviewing potential data sources that speak to those problems, right? Now we're getting to a spot where we want to start quantifying things. And to quantify some of these things, you're going to look for certain types of metrics. It might be website visitor metrics. Are those going down over time? And what is that indicative of? Employee onboarding services, employee onboarding surveys. Like, what is the experience when employees get onboarded? What about when they're offboarded and you have the offboarding kind of interview? What are they saying about your organization? Post-event feedback surveys, right? How are our events running? What things are good? What things are bad? You also want to look at other things like administrative hours to complete certain tasks. I'm thinking specifically about things like that are extremely redundant, where it's like, yeah, we're spending a lot of time doing this stuff and there's got to be a better way. Like, how do you quantify that? Where do you get those numbers for that? There's other things, right? Year-over-year operational costs, quarter-over-quarter donations. Are they trending up? Are they trending down? And how do those relate to the problems that you identified in the first kind of half of the exercise? Yearly third-party service costs, program volunteer hours, breach remediation costs. When you think about the nature of the environment that we live in right now, with everything going digital, there are some costs associated with ensuring that your data is secure and protected, and that it's preventing, kind of external parties from getting eyes on it or doing something nefarious with it. So there are costs that are associated with that, but we've got to figure out how to quantify those things. Opportunity costs, email opt-ins or opt-outs, missed project deadlines. These are all things that can have numbers associated with them that we can tie back to some of the higher level problems that we identified earlier on. And that's really the mindset that we want to start getting into, and you'll see how this kind of fleshes out as we continue to go through. But like I said, it's one thing to talk about a high level problem. It's another thing to have data and numbers, whether you're internally or even external numbers that support your business case that you want to include in your presentation or your discussion on these topics. So for each one of these bullet points, what I'm going to do is just give you a really simple, like high level, example, okay, of how to go about considering or thinking or even including these types of concepts into a presentation or a white paper or whatever you need to try and sell this internally to your leadership and executive team. So in this example, I've got an HR, we got HR management challenges specifically related to onboarding and getting new hires brought up to speed within your organization. So, and I've seen this kind of format before, and that's why I kind of use this problem goal, but it really does help to clearly show what the problem is and then what the goal is, like what you want to achieve. In this case, we've identified 4 key problems. New hires rarely have all the tools, information, and access they need on their first day. Existing team members waste time filling onboarding gaps. So other staff members are supporting the onboarding process when they should actually be focused more on their day-to-day job. New employee ramp-up period is longer than usual. So it's taking longer for our new employees to ramp up and really get fully engaged and get to do their work than it typically should. And it's costing us in terms of dollars, morale, and employee retention. And again, this is just an example, right? But think about this when it comes to things like even other solutions like event management. What would the problems be that you would have related to events, or what would the problems be related to a CRM, your donor management system that you might have to start thinking about implementing. So for this example, we're using HR management. The goal that we'd have in this particular case is provide a seamless onboarding experience for new hires, eliminate reliance on other staff to manage onboarding hiccups, have new hires hit the ground running sooner than later, and reduce onboarding administrative costs while simultaneously retaining top talent. Okay, and again, what I like about these sessions with ONN is you're going to get access to this presentation. Feel free to take this, tweak it, edit it, put things in, pull things out, whatever it might be, to make it yours for your specific case and the specific solution that you're trying to get to. And then again, just a high level snapshot. I've seen this in other really good business case presentations where they clearly illustrated what the key pain points were and actually put some numbers around them. So in this, we just have a little small chart. Turnover and onboarding costs, our turnover is up 25% year over year, and some additional data there. We've got a new staff ramp up period. We've got some metrics in there that talk about, how much is it costing us to actually have a new staff member ramp up to a full level of productivity, right? And we base this on, number of hours worked and all that good stuff. These are the quantifiable metrics, right? Support staff assisting. So this is when you have other staff members that are supporting the new hire. Like, what does that look like in terms of staff and the number of hours that are being consumed? And then I also included other things, like not everything has to be related specifically to dollars and cents. in this example for this HR management challenge, we started looking at employee onboarding survey. Right, so let's say we do this annually and we go out and we put out a survey. In this particular case, for this particular challenge, we got a high number of folks that got onboarded saying that the process needs improvement. So these are more metrics that we'd want to include. The last one that I included in here is, again, reaching out to external sources, right? In this case, we went out to Forbes, looked at an industry survey, 45% of nonprofits seek new jobs by 2025. So again, what we're doing here is we're identifying the problem, specific in this case regarding HR management challenges and onboarding, and we're coming up with the data points and putting the data together that speaks to why this is a problem that needs to be addressed, okay? And that's what we're gonna continue to do with each one of these bullet points as we go through this. So now that you've got the problem and its associated data points, now you can talk about how to come up with options, right? And the model that I like here, and I've seen this kind of used often, is kind of this step-by-step approach to guide your stakeholders through your thought process when you started looking at different options and solutions out there, right? So you've already talked about the high-level issue. You put some data points around how much that issue is affecting your organization. Now you want to start walking your stakeholders and your executives through, like, how do we get to a certain select list of potential solutions that could address those pain points that we raised, okay? And so it might be a few things. You have a recommended pool of options. You probably talk to your network. You looked at third-party reviews. I've got some examples there: Google, GetApp, Capterra, G2, Trust Radius. These are all different web-based providers that provide reviews of different software and technology solutions out there. You took a look at the vendor site to understand their functionality, what level of support, training, what customer feedback has looked like. You've sent out some initial requests for information, right, to get a bit more info that's probably not natively there on the website. You've narrowed down your options, and then you select those that you want to dive deeper into and potentially start securing budget for. And again, I've seen this kind of waterfall approach. I've seen like a funnel that has all of the vendors up top, and then as you go through each criteria, it gets down to just to select one or two vendors that you actually want to dive deeper into with a formal RFP and more demonstrations and that kind of thing. But the key here is that what you're trying to do is illustrate the fact that you've already gone out and done the research around who is out there that can solve these problems and why you feel a couple or three of them are worth diving deeper into and getting some more information on. Now, how I've seen this presented in the past is this kind of chart approach, right? Where you've got each of your vendors, and these are just some sample, logos that I pulled up offline on the internet. But what happens is you kind of grade each one of the vendors. And it makes it very clear for someone that's going through this presentation to understand, again, your thought process. Perhaps they've heard of some of the other vendors that you don't want to include in your finalized list, but at least they see that the thought has gone into it. And you've done your due diligence to try and whittle it down to make the exercise a bit easier. So you can get to what we're going to talk about next, how to determine what the right budget is, okay? And at the end of this exercise, what you should have is, a couple of suggestions or a couple different vendors or so that you're really going to start, again, leaning into to try and get a bit further into the weeds on. You can start talking about things like cost and other factors that are really going to impact your organization. In this particular situation for our HR management challenges, we went through, online reviews, peer feedback, core functionality, its compliance with our risk and compliance process and policies, technical support, and then we have a little recommendation, like our guidance, right? Like, why did we leave some out? And then why did we include the last two over on the right, okay? All right, so you've identified some issues, you've assigned data or quantifiable metrics to those issues to help others understand the pain, and you've shown your stakeholders kind of how you arrived at which potential solutions could help resolve some of those problems. This is when you start to talk about the actual costs, right? You've already articulated the fact that there are solutions out there that can meet the majority, if not all, of your needs. Now you've got to talk about, like, let's make sure we're clear on the costs that are associated with those solutions. And there are a couple of cost factors, especially when it comes to technology. And this is where I would suggest, if you haven't already, like, reach out to those different providers or vendors that you're really interested in and start getting an idea of the approximate budget. But do it with the following kind of cost factors in mind, right? So there's always going to be the upfront. This is, the gearing up to go, your boarding kind of costs, right? When you're just about to start your journey. This is the first time fees. This is setup and implementation. This is initial training, and relates to that, consider staff downtime, right? There are going to be people that are probably going to be part of the project that have to get pulled out of their day-to-day work to be involved in helping get the new system or platform or solution up and running. So those are your upfront costs. Usually it's a one-time kind of cost, and then we start moving more in towards the ongoing costs. And that's the second bucket. That's when you're on board the plane, you're in flight, that you're on your journey. And this will be things like your ongoing subscription term fees, plus any increases, and that's kind of standard practice. You might sign up for a contract that's $10,000 a year, and then realize that in that contract there's a clause that says, well, we have the right to increase the price by anywhere from 5 to 10% at the next renewal. Be sure to keep those factors in mind. Ongoing training and customization services. So you might get new staff that need to be trained on the solution. You might need to tweak the solution or modify it, and you might need help from the vendor to do that or from an external party to do that. Consider some of those costs as well as part of your ongoing costs. And then support costs, and this is both in terms of downtime or upgrades. If you talk about these cost factors openly and candidly with the vendor, the partners that you're looking at bringing on, you can get a good idea of what those upfront and ongoing costs will be approximately. Okay, and again, this is for the purpose of trying to understand the range of budget that you're going to need to get approval for. Okay. Now, one way I've seen this displayed when, again, presenting it internally is to kind of break out the upfront costs and kind of show them on a calendar, at least for a minimum of a year. That's typically the amount of time for like a cloud or technology subscription contract. In our example here for this HR management challenge one, we've gone through the process of identifying the vendor selection timeframe, the contract purchase, implementation and setup, training, migration, go live, ongoing support and services, and then the upcoming renewal that we talked about before, right? Like after the first year is done, what does that renewal look like? And we've broken out some of the different costs associated with the upfront kind of portion and then the ongoing portion. And again, this is a really simple and clear way to say, hey, I'm looking for this much money up front as an initial investment, but there's also going to be an ongoing portion as we continue to use the solution over 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. Okay, this helps lay it out really clearly and easily for those that you're presenting your business case to. All right. Now, one of the really important pieces is, present how you will achieve an actual return on investment in ROI. And when you're measuring the return on investment, there's a couple of key things that are a few things to keep in mind. You got to determine your top metrics. So pick at least 3 to 5 key performance indicators that are going to speak to your ability to achieve your ROI. Okay, we talked about some of those quantifiable metrics at the beginning. When you go in and look at getting a particular software solution or system, there's often reports and dashboards and information that you can pull out of that system. What your job is in terms of trying to sell this solution internally is to make sure that whatever reports or dashboards or information you can extract from that system, they clearly can be tied directly to the quantifiable metrics that you identified initially. Okay, at the start of this exercise. Once you make that linkage, it's very clear that once you go in and run that report at the end of the quarter or the end of the year, you can say, okay, well, based on some of the assumptions that we had and this report that we pulled from this system, we know that we have been able to save X number of dollars, increase our number of donations, reduce administrative overhead by X percent. It's really about tying the two together, right? What the solution can provide tied to the metrics that you need to monitor and see an improvement in. Okay, and that's what we're talking about with that second point, like show how your KPIs equate to actually achieving your ROI. Discuss how you will monitor those metrics. Again, the reports and dashboards, discussions with your technology partner to make sure the relationship is intact and things are going well and the solution is doing what you need it to do in order to alleviate the pain points that you had. Be very open and conservative about your assumptions, right? This is an important one. Because you want to have assumptions in there that, I always go with saying that it's better to overpromise it's better to over deliver. It's better to under promise and over deliver. I'm getting tongue tied, because you want to help show that this solution is capable of doing what you need it to do, and in an ideal world, you'll surpass the expectations of those that you're accountable or reporting to. Right. So you want to be a bit conservative in your estimations, your assumptions. Um, go over accountability, both on the staff and the technology partner side or the vendor side. Consider what other potential risks there are to the success of this implementation or this purchase, right? Things like employee turnover, changing board membership, whatever it might be. Like, what are some of the things that can negatively impact your ability to get a return on investment? And make sure you're clear about those things when you're putting together your business case. And then clearly show when you will hit that return on investment. That's the key piece. Like, at what point in time will this solution or this technology start paying for itself, right? At what point will it pay itself back? And then at what point will it start showing increasing value, right? Where it's surpassed the amount of the initial investment that we put into it. And so this example, again, we're going back to our HR management challenge. Again, high level, really simplistic kind of example, but this is a model that I've seen used in the past where you clearly have your costs associated with purchase, implementation, training, support, et cetera, and subscription fees. And you kind of label those up top across 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, right? Or whatever term kind of works best for your particular organization. And then you have your assumptions on over to the right, right? This case, we say, this is year over year changes. There's going to be lower systems training year over year. There's going to be lower hands-on support as you get more familiar with the platform year over year. But there's also going to be some price increases gradually year over year, right? So we've clearly identified what the costs are going to be for the first 5 years. And on the bottom half, then we have our benefits. And with our benefits, that's when we start tying it back to those benefits that we need to hit when we first set out, I kind of identifying and quantifying what the biggest challenges were. So in this case, we want to reduce our onboarding costs. We want to reduce the amount of time to ramp up a new employee. We want to save our staff time in terms of supporting new hires and getting pulled outside of what they should be doing from a day-to-day work standpoint. And then we've got associated KPIs. So when we go into this system, whatever we're looking at doing, we're going to start running some reports that talk about, e-signatures, reference collection, background checks. We're going to take a look at onboarding start and end time reports. We're going to look at staff activity reports. These are the KPIs that we're going to use to help us to determine if we're hitting our ROI. And then we associate those KPIs with some type of gain or increase. In this case, I made an assumption of 40% KPI increase year over year that will tie back to the savings numbers or the problem numbers, I should say, that we had earlier on when we quantified what some of these pain points really meant to us. Okay, and then the goal here is, you'll see it's very clear that at the bottom there's still a bit of a cost outlay in year 1 and year 2. We start to achieve value in year 3 in this example, and then by about midway through year 4, that's when we've hit our ROI and we're just getting more and more value out of the solution. Okay, but this approach helps really quickly summarize the value that we're expecting to get out of the solution over time. And this is a really good one to have because it helps move away from that assumption that as soon as we buy the solution, everything's going to be perfect and all of our problems are going to be solved, and we're going to get an ROI on day 1. It's an unfortunate misconception that I've seen in the corporate space and in the nonprofit space. But when you lay it out in a fashion like this and have some clear KPIs and metrics associated with it, it does help. It helps paint a better picture around what the current state is and what the future can look like. Now, you'll also notice I included other things, other intangible benefits on the right side. Now, sometimes it's going to be hard to get specific numbers associated with certain benefits of implementing a technology solution. So what we want to do here is we don't leave them out completely, but it's still good to mention them and call them out, because again, you're trying to show all the benefits of the solution as much as you can, even in some cases where it's hard to quantify certain things. In this particular example with our HR management challenges, solution review, we talk about, higher employee morale, reduced employee turnover, and then kind of other correlated value gains by having an efficient team and a faster ramp up and all that good stuff. So we might not have specific metrics for these things, but we want to be sure that we call them out because they're part of that broader picture of why we want to invest in this particular technology solution, okay? All right, so encourage action by making the why now very clear. And I can't emphasize this one enough. So really when it comes to creating a sense of urgency, there are a few key things that you want to include in the discussion or in the presentation, right? Key thing is like, if nothing is done, the problem will continue. And think back to the identification and the quantification step, right? That chart that I had, the employee ramp up and the staff impact, those will just continue to grow over time if we're not doing anything, okay? The related risks will increase. So compliance, reduced revenue, external help required. Typically, as organizations grow and get more complex, the associated challenges or risks grow along with them, right? And it becomes a situation where we've got to start thinking more strategically about how we want to mitigate some of those challenges and risks. And then the ROI will take longer to reach. So because we've already clearly painted a picture of how we're going to achieve ROI over whatever period of time, in our HR management example, it's 5 years, the more we push out this solution, the further that ROI gets pushed out, right? We're just kind of kicking the tires down the road and not really addressing the problem up front. And this kind of goes into, discuss why waiting whatever period of time, 3, 6, or 9 months or 12 months is not an option, right? We have to do something now. We got to create that sense of urgency because we can't afford to keep doing what we've been doing in the past. And always refer back to your high level project planning where you consider, okay, the project start time, the implementation effort, the training, the support, like those have dedicated buckets of time associated with them. And you can't keep expanding those out or pushing those out because you're just ultimately pushing out when you're going to hit that ROI, okay? And then close it out with a call to action. And, I was thinking about this. It's funny because like we're all doing workarounds currently, right? Like there's a poor workaround is already being paid for right now, right? Like one way or another, these things are getting done. There is somebody on the team that is taking a bunch of different Excel files and combining them all to one. It takes a bunch of time, but it's getting done. It's probably not getting done in the most effective manner. Maybe there's a system or solution out there that can automate that process and make things happen a lot faster. So a workaround is being paid for, right? And make sure that that's clear. And you've kind of already articulated that with the quantification of those pain points. But you want to really reiterate the fact that it's already being paid for. And to go against that, is that it's time to invest in a good solution, right? It's time to move away from what we're currently paying to do poorly to moving towards paying for something that is going to give us a good return in the long run. Okay. So with our example, with our HR management challenges, I like this kind of view because it shows a calendar which highlights different times of the year when we should be doing certain things, right? And you've got some, you're going to want to call out certain considerations about your implementation plan and then what your next steps are. In this example, we've got a holiday appeal in December, so we don't want staff working on an implementation or any kind of other project work. We have roles to be filled in February and March, right? So we want to get the system up and running before then. We know that it's approximately 5 months to select a vendor and then get to a successful go live with our HR management solution, onboarding solution. And then we've also got our staff onboarding surveys that go out in April of each year, right? And if we take a look back to our initial set of numbers, the monthly cost of just doing nothing, of doing what we've been doing, is roughly $9,000 per month when you factor in the cost of onboarding new hires, the ramp up time that gets extended, and the reliance on other staff members to kind of step away from what they're supposed to be doing to help out that new hire. We've kind of added that up and said, okay, well, we're already paying about $9,000 a month to do all that stuff, and we clearly articulate these key dates and timeframes on a calendar so everybody kind of knows the schedule that we're working off of. We clearly identified when the staff survey is going to go out the following year. We clearly identified kind of where we are, how long it's going to take for the project to complete, and then any blackout days or any big meetings where we can't afford to have our resources be taken off and work on this other stuff. And so the next step then is, it's very clear. We want to start talking about budget approval, right? So this is that call to action. We've taken them through the whole story of how we got to this spot where we need to get something done. Now it's like, okay, well, we need to get approval for budget, right? We've got an idea of the costs. So we've kind of outlaid what the upfront and ongoing costs are going to be. We need budget approval. We need to, based on our project schedule, we want to have an RFP go out, vendor selection with a target date for that, a target date for project kickoff, and then a target date for system go live. This closing kind of element or slide ties everything together. We've taken them through the whole story of why we've identified a particular set of problems, what they actually mean to us in terms of hard numbers, and then what our thought process was in terms of trying to identify a potential solution to those issues, and what actions we need to really take to start hitting that ROI or start really getting the value out of investment in that solution. Okay. So I hope that helps out. Green Merits Consulting, that is my organization. This is my sole advisory consultancy, where what I do is I help nonprofits navigate the world of this technology adoption, and it manifests itself in a bunch of different ways. One in terms of business case development and design, working with your technology providers to help ensure that you're both being successful with the solution. But by all means, feel free to reach out to me on any of these topics. One of the things that our service provides is, an experienced set of eyes for the technology landscape. So you might already have some solutions out there. Maybe you're thinking about getting other solutions, but what you're getting is, a person that has worked inside some of these larger, cloud and hardware technology companies to be able to really understand and make sense of the nuances associated with working and partnering with them. Someone on your side of the table at purchase or renewal. So if you're about to sign the dotted line for that, 3-year subscription to this new CRM solution or this new e-signature solution, it's an opportunity to say, okay, well, wait a second, it would be good to get another set of eyes on this, because they're going to have a good understanding of the gotchas and the nuances and what questions we should be asking and what pitfalls we should avoid. And then contractual insight into some of the business, legal, and technical things that come up in these contracts, come up in these relationships between yourselves and your technology providers, that makes sense to address or understand upfront as opposed to later on. This is kind of the core message or story or offering of Green Merits Consulting. Okay. I always like this quote to kind of close things off, and I think it ties in nicely with this topic of really getting an ROI, right? So price is what you pay and value is what you get. And that's from Warren Buffett. With thought process that, you're paying for something, you're putting out some initial dollars, money, whatever you're going to put to this particular technology or solution or investment. But ultimately, what you really want to do is get to that value spot. Like, what is it that is really helping you alleviate pain, really helping drive your nonprofit organization forward, giving better outcomes to your constituents or your stakeholders? Like, that is where the value is. So there's an element of having a price to pay in terms of that initial investment, but over the long term, the value is what you're really trying to drive after and what you're really trying to get. Thanks again for all your time. My email is there, kgeorge@greenmerits.com, or you can find me at www.greenmerits.com. But I appreciate everybody, making the time to come in and listen to this, and hopefully some of these bullet points or some of these approaches really resonate with you in terms of your next technology review or purchase. With that, Kavita, I'm going to throw it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. I found that to be super useful, and hopefully the folks online did as well. And I just want to encourage them to ask any questions. If you have any, you can use the Q&A box or the chat box, whatever you feel comfortable with. And you have Kevin at your disposal. So if you'd like to ask him any questions, please feel free to do that now. So let's just give folks a minute. Thank you, Kevin, for that very insightful presentation. And I think that your slides will for sure make for a good resource for folks to refer back to.
That was my hope. Yeah. I think sometimes including some just even high level basic examples of things. It's like when someone's about to, consider putting together a presentation or a document or something like that. It's good to have something to kind of refer back to. So yeah, hopefully that helps out.
Absolutely. Okay, so I don't see any questions popping up, so we can sort of let that be a testament to your thorough presentation. Oh, we have one. So the question is, how do we handle comparing services offered by vendors when they all describe components and services differently?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very tough one. Um, a lot of times, this is what you find out when you start getting into the weeds of a particular like RFP. One of the things that I like to lean into, and it kind of goes back and forth because I've seen vendors respond to RFPs in ways that later on when you get to the implementation, it's like, wait a second, that we asked about that and it's not here. So a lot of times it really is, you only get access to those kinds of things in that kind of detail when you've really gone into the weeds on the RFP. You can do a lot of your research up front though, and that's why I showed that kind of waterfall diagram that talks about not just an RFP in general, but like what resources have you looked at? Like, did you look at your peer reviews, the G2s, the trust radiuses, like those different resources and sites do a relatively okay job about comparing different vendors at a high level. That never really beats out doing live demonstrations with the vendor, seeing their solution. I like seeing language in RFPs or in demonstrations that say, show us how your solution will do this, right? As opposed to, does your solution do the following? And the answer on the RFP is, yes, it does. It's like, no, okay, well, show us how your solution does this particular thing, right? And it's key when getting into discussions and demonstrations with vendors. There's always that feature by feature comparison that we want to get into, right? Which is important. Where I find organizations be the most successful when it comes to understanding what a technology can do is being very clear and transparent about why you need a certain feature or function to do what you want it to do. And this helps illustrate the importance to the vendor that this isn't just something to put a check mark beside and move on. It's like, no, they're going to be paying attention to this because this is how they're going to be monitoring this particular KPI, which is tied to their business case. So long answer, and I hope there's some nuggets in there, but it really does depend. I mean, there's the review websites, there's speaking to your peers and others, putting out formal RFPs, and being really specific about the value and the metrics that you need to monitor in using that particular solution.
That makes sense to me, and I think that would have answered their question. And so
Okay.
we have one more. How should we look at meeting our exact needs now compared to trying to plan for future growth? Should we intentionally overbuild in order to hopefully grow into the solution?
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great question. This comes up often. Another session that I did with another team, that this one came up. So I gravitate more towards buying what you need now as opposed to overbuying. I'm not a fan of shelfware. Shelfware is when you buy a massive solution and 80% of it sits on the shelf. It's not turned on, nobody's using it. The challenge with that is that you end up investing in something that you aren't getting value for. I lean more towards having an open and transparent conversation with your technology provider to say, here is what we need now. This is a relationship. Like, we want to work together on this. Here's where we plan on growing. Now, as part of that conversation, whether you're looking at a 1, 3, or 5-year contract, part of that conversation should be, okay, we don't need all the bells and whistles right now. We need this right now. But can you get creative with us and talk to us about how we should plan to adopt those additional modules or solutions later on as we continue to grow? Because when you have that conversation, then you can start to talk about what price levers and negotiation elements and price holds potentially can be included in at a contractual level, so that you've kind of future-proofed yourself. This avoids the need to kind of buy everything up all at once, and not be ready to have everybody use it, right? And then, the unfortunate piece with that is if you buy everything at once up front, it can kind of skew your ROI calculations, because you might not be getting all the value of those additional modules, yet you're going to be kind of measured against the entire investment in that solution. So unless you get really creative with how you're going to tie that ROI calculation to specific modules as you roll them out, I lean more towards, we got our upfront cost for the first year, 2 years. This is what it's going to look like. As we continue to grow, here's how our costs are going to increase or decrease depending on our use of the platform.
So I guess is the best course of action to then pick a solution that can grow with you. It's meeting
Ideally,
your
yeah.
needs now, and then in the future, if you grow, the platform can grow with you, or it can grow with your needs, right?
Right. That's what I lean towards. And you'll see this. I mean, cloud and technology, cloud and SaaS kind of technology companies, they typically have we'll call like graduated pricing models, right? Like small, mid-size is this, enterprise is this, and then it's like super enterprise, call us, right? Because that's the negotiation one where you can talk to them. I think the key here is if you're having that conversation up front with the technology provider to say, yeah, like this is what we need right now, but here's where we want to go. You can start to have that conversation about what it will look like to get there, what the cost investment's going to be, what training's going to look like all that stuff. And what we're ultimately getting to is the total cost of ownership for that solution, right? The lifetime value is the term that we use in the industry of what you're going to get at using that particular solution with that relationship with that vendor.
Yeah, and the nice thing about paying for what you need now is that if things were to change, as we know, we're just coming out of a pandemic, and then that growth that you had hoped for didn't happen, that you're not paying for it up front. Like you didn't sort of invest in it up front.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It gives you room to, and the retort to this, the comeback, the pushback to this would be, well, if I buy it all right now, I can get this massive discount. And it's like, yes, that's how they get you, right? Like,
that's how
of course,
Roger owns my life.
exactly. There's a conversation to be had around, and these are the conversations I love having with technology providers, especially the ones that truly are invested in your success, right? Like the forward-thinking cloud and SaaS technology providers know that if they want to keep you as a lifetime customer, that they've got to get flexible and really think about how you want to grow and how you're going to do that. And that's a conversation. That's not just we're picking a vendor because they checked a bunch of boxes. Like that's a relationship.
Right. Okay, so we have one more question. Is there any danger going to an SaaS model instead of having a custom built or native platform?
Yeah. So this could be a long one. So I'll give what I've kind of seen and learned as cloud technologies have kind of grown. I don't want to date myself, but I remember the dial-up days, right? So, right, I've kind of grown up with the internet, so I understand the the need or want to have local systems, a local server that's in the closet around the corner, and I get a physical tape that comes out of it, and I take that tape and I put it in my briefcase and I take it home. Like I used to do that for servers and all that kind of stuff. I get the hesitation that comes up when we start talking about moving things to cloud. I think this is where the conversation about kind of the pros and cons of going cloud versus staying on-prem is, both in terms of a risk and compliance side of the house, but also in terms of just like administration and management. When you move to the cloud, a lot of things that you typically be responsible for on your own, uptime, support, security, you essentially take those and you offload that. You say, hey, cloud provider, like this is your responsibility now. That's why it's a subscription model that you continue to pay for, because their responsibility is keeping the security up, the backups, all that, adding new features to the solution. That is all the good stuff about going with the SaaS platform. Now, the potential gotcha with that route, and I think this is kind of where this question is going, is that in the and depends on the platform provider, but typically you don't have as much flexibility for customization, right? In the old days, when you had an application that you developed and built natively, it's in-house, you talk to your application developer, they work some magic, do some custom coding, and your solution does exactly what you need it to do. There are pros and cons with this. Sometimes you get to situations where things are complicated, teams change, you lose some of that knowledge. It's hard to maintain those existing custom built applications. But I'm finding more and more, and I think this is what kind of the trend is showing us, is that the level of trust in cloud technologies, despite some of the pitfalls that it has here and there, right? Some of the issues that pop up here and there, has far outweighed the on-prem, I'll say, kind of investment in technology, right? By leaps and bounds, even when it comes to things like, storage and cloud backup and that kind of thing. So there are some dangers, but I would say that what the market has told us and what the industry and the space has told us is that the benefits of moving to the cloud have gotten to a point where they outweigh the pitfalls.
Okay, and so we'll do our last question
Sure.
before we wrap up. Are there strategies for being able to be nimble with new technologies while still needing proven and dependable solutions?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I still think there is a need for increasing training, comfort, familiarity with cloud technologies on the whole, and this helps contribute to the ability to be nimble. To have a discussion about, okay, how do we extract data from one system, pull it into here, transform it, and then put it into this other system? If you don't understand those concepts, or your team or staff or your partners don't understand how those kinds of things work, what an integration looks like, that decreases your ability to be nimble. So I think I go back to education a lot, right? Really immersing yourself in not just the fact that these are technologies, but they are closely ingrained with people and process, right? And you got to make sure that the team is up to speed on what's involved in managing them and using them. So that will contribute to being nimble. The other thing that comes to mind on this one is, and it kind of stems from the last question, is looking at solutions that are not as closed, that allow you to easily integrate with other systems. Keep an eye out for those types of solutions as well, right? And I've seen this happen before, where I was doing a contract review and going through some of the documentation for a particular vendor, and there were like basic things like there were no APIs to be able to quickly connect to the back end of their system and pull out information. And this was one of the key requirements that this particular nonprofit had. But things like that prevent you from being able to be flexible and connect with other systems and pull in different data and analyze different data differently, if you're in a very closed kind of platform. And you'll see signs of that when you look at the solution, when you ask these questions during demonstrations. How do we get our data out if we want to change to another provider? We use this business intelligence platform and we want to be able to run some customized reports. How do we get that information out? If there's a long pause, if there's, oh, well, let's parking lot that for now and I'll get back to you via email, a couple of weeks after we sign the contract. Like that's, those are all red flags. And I would say that is the opposite of being able to be set up for being nimble.
Well, thank you so much for answering those questions and for sharing your expertise with us today, Kevin. I know that it's been super informative, and thank you to the participants for joining us. And we hope you also found this to be useful. As mentioned before, we will email you the recording and Kevin's slides and any other resources that are relevant to the topic. And yeah, early bird tickets are on sale for our conference. So we hope to see you there. We will be back in person this year. So that's the next big event coming up for ONN. And yeah, thank you again, Kevin. Take care, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Bye.